So that doesn't. Okay, we
All
are
right.
live. Oh my gosh. So let's
Awesome.
just give everybody like a minute.
Sure.
And
Yeah. Log in.
oh, we've already got 4 on. This is excellent.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
I was coming in hot this morning myself. So
And you're in hot pink, so it is
hot pink.
perfect. I love it.
I figured, I don't know why.
So I think why don't we just introduce ourselves in
Sure.
case anybody is just randomly watching us and has no idea about anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you go first?
Okay, so I am Catherine Barreto, and I am the creator of Mom Talk Educate. Mom Talk Educate is a platform that gives courses. There's so much free content as well, just for those that maybe need somewhere to get started and they maybe are on a tighter budget. So if you go to Mom Talk Educate on YouTube, there's loads of free posing tutorials and editing tutorials. And yeah, there's just so much free content. If you're interested in following a program or an education course with support, then you can go to momtalkeducate.com. And that website is full of courses. And then we also have a free Facebook group that's actually, I think, just hit 14,000 members. So it's an excellent community if you need that ongoing support. So on Facebook, just search up Mom Talk Educate, and you can find that group and join it and then get the help that you need.
Awesome. So I've known Catherine for 20 years or so. I've been a physiotherapist myself for getting close to 23 years. And I've always worked in direct patient care, and I've seen all orthopedic conditions from newborns all the way up to seniors. I do own my own physiotherapy clinic as well in Leduc, Alberta, Canada. I also have a second business in which we work with safety and ergonomics for workers. So everything from office ergonomics to lifting safety, and to all of those things as well. And so we kind of combined all of these things together to kind of put it all together and really focus on the photographer and focus on all of the things that you guys might maybe miss or not think about, but trying to make things really safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is really important because anyone can pick up a camera and say that they're a photographer, but you might not always, if you don't have the education, you may not think about all the things that could possibly happen. And so those are all the things that we wanted to talk about in this course. And the collaboration's just been so much fun.
Yes, it's been awesome. And as a newborn photographer, I've been in this industry for going on 13 years, and I've mainly specialized in newborns. So I am very familiar with all things that could come about potentially. And also just being in the industry, I've seen a lot of photographers have so many questions on safety. And there's that common question like, where do I get safety certified? Is there a safety certification? And is there safety protocols? Is there safety measures that I should be taking? So I'll just answer that question. Technically, there is 0 safety certification available for newborn photographers. So I'm just going to put that out there. There is not a single safety certification that is accredited worldwide. Okay, so just so that you know that. However, the steps that you can take initially to be more safe when working with newborns, and we talk about this in our course, is infant CPR.
Yep, so, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
And you can do that locally, and they can certify you locally with infant CPR specifically. So that is something that you can do right away.
Definitely. I would recommend everyone always have the CPR. And depending on where you are, you may have to take it once a year, or sometimes it's every 3 years. But I'd recommend doing this course every year. Keep it up, because in the case of an emergency, you really want to remember what's going on. And after a year, you probably have forgotten all of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so because there is no worldwide accredited or certification for newborn safety, you want to know where to turn to for safety protocols specifically for newborn photography. And what we have created is a course that is going to build up that knowledge and give you that foundation so that you have safety protocols in place. You're going to be able to recognize certain medical conditions. You're going to be fully prepared to handle a lot of different scenarios, pretty much every scenario we could think of, actually. And we also not only care about newborn safety protocols and making the infant your top priority in safety, but we also care about the photographer, your business. We want to help you set up that foundation so that you are going to be successful and fully prepared,
Prepared.
basically.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, safety or ergonomics or any of these things we talk about, it is a sliding scale. It's not necessarily black and white. And I think that hopefully what you come out of this doing is that you learn to ask good questions. And the more questions you ask and the more educated and the more prepared you are, the better everything's going to go. And so the more blind you feel walking into something, the worse, that things could happen. And so I think that that's the overall arching theme is that, yes, you're going to have to make decisions on what is best for you based on lots of different things. And hopefully you have the tools and the knowledge after taking a course like this that you can make better decisions that are smart and safe.
Absolutely. So now that we've talked so much about everything, I want to make sure that people can hear us.
Okay.
This is the story of my life because everything seems to go wrong with me. So I'm just gonna
double check that.
Log on real fast and just make sure everything. Oh, we're good. We're good.
Everyone can hear us.
Okay. We had a little technical glitch on my end when we did a Instagram live on Friday. So I'm just like, this would be bad if we did it again.
Make sure everyone can hear us.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like we have a few people joining us. I'm just going to pop into the Facebook group and just tell everyone that we are live. And in the meantime, while I'm doing that, Tennille has a bunch of different questions that students have asked. So did you want to maybe perhaps explain? Okay, so this was just asked in the Facebook group just a couple days ago. And a student wanted to know what are really good safety protocols to have in place when posing a newborn on a higher posing table. So not the dog bed, not the bean bag, but a higher posing table. What would you recommend?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, the table itself, it should be of good quality. It should be reinforced. You want to make sure that it's, not going to move or turn or anything like that. Secondly, my first question would be, why do you need to use the posing table so high, right? Because the higher the newborn is off the ground, the more risk that you're going to take on. And so most people will say, because then I can stand and I'm closer, closer to the baby and things like that. And so we do go over this in big discussion in the course of maybe better decisions that you can make. But let's just say in this case, the decision has been made and the person wants to work at the high posing table. So in this case, I would definitely make sure I had someone else with me there as well. So there's two people. There's always going to be a hand on the baby at all times. And you want to make sure all your stuff, well, no matter what, but all your stuff is close to you because you're never going to walk away or leave this. Also, you have to consider how old is this baby? How awake is this baby? Because the older a baby is, the more awake they are, the more likely they're going to move or twist or turn. You can take other precautions, like maybe you've got a consistent white noise or things like that, so you don't have a studio that's loud or things that people are going to startle. Other things I would consider is, who else do you have in your studio? Do you have a toddler running around? Is there a dog there? Is the doorbell going to ring and startle things? Like, these are all considerations that you're going to have to think about when you're working at this table. What happens if all of a sudden you're dealing with poop or pee and you need to run to go, grab a towel? You have to think about all of these things that could happen. Yeah. So considering all of that, it is important to know that, yes, of course, the higher, it's just, it's gravity. The higher the baby is away from the ground, the more likely there is to be an incident. And so that's a choice you have to make. That's what we call risk assessment. And so you're going to make the decision if you're comfortable with that or not as well. So
yeah, those are really, really great protocols to have in place. If I could offer just a couple suggestions as well. So if you are using a posing table, as we know, there's a lot of posing tables in the market for newborn photographers specifically. So I just wanted to discuss a few things that have happened in the past, just so that you're aware of what could have happened or could happen if you don't have these protocols in place. So like Tennille mentioned at the beginning, a high table needs to be reinforced or secure. So there has been situations where newborn photographers have spent $1,000 on this fancy posing table that can collapse and it can move around and you can take it here and there and it's portable and you can set it up, and they've collapsed and the infant has fallen. And that is a photographer's worst nightmare and a parent's worst nightmare, because they are ensuring the safety of their newborn in your hands. And then your product that you've spent a fortune on fails.
Mhm.
So there's a few things that you can do to make sure, and I would recommend doing this right after you watch this video, is checking your table to make sure that there are safety clasps that are put in, basically to prevent a table from failing and falling. So sometimes connectors and brackets can fail. So you have to have that additional safety
Mhm.
measure to make sure that if something was to break, would the table collapse? And if you can prevent that from happening, then that would be, your
Yeah.
best option. Secondly, is that if it's a table that doesn't have anything on the sides, usually it will, just because you're going to be clamping fabric to it. However, I would feel like if I was posing on a table, a lot of photographers go and buy those collapsible tables from Costco or somewhere, and they use those as a posing table as a cheaper option. But those don't have any safety guards on the sides
Yeah.
or on the front. And the reason why those safety guards are important is because of startle reflexes. And if a baby was to startle while you are in the middle of a newborn pose, and maybe you're like, you know what I mean? Just like anything,
Mhm.
worst case, we don't want the baby to roll off the table.
That's right.
And that's why, like, when you think of a changing table, like a proper newborn changing table for parents, new
Mhm.
parents, they always have the railing around the table
Round.
because the baby cannot roll off.
Yeah.
And so that's something that you need to consider if you are using one of those DIY style tables. Maybe you can reinforce it with something that has like a little rail all the way around, just so that if, for worst case, the baby was to startle and maybe do a little roll, it's unlikely, but it's
Mhm.
possible.
It's
And we
possible.
always want to be preventative in our care and working with newborns.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to see if we have any questions. Please feel free to post any questions while we are on this live, because we want to be able to answer
Yeah.
any of your questions while we are able to.
Let's go on.
I am going to just share the link now really quickly, just in case anybody is running slow or running behind this morning.
The other thing I'll mention too, just with the posing table, is making sure that the space below is clear, because tripping hazards could be a problem too. So
Mhm.
making sure that you're not having extension cords running through or something like that in a
Yes.
temporary type of situation, or you've got a cord plugged in and all of a sudden you're not used to it being there and then you trip over and things like that. So
Absolutely. And toddlers honestly can be
toddlers are not ideal.
yeah,
if
they're
you're on
not predictable. You can't predict a toddler.
Mhm.
And so because of that, it's almost like you're playing with fire when you have a
Yeah.
toddler. So
Yeah.
it's really important to make sure that everything that could go wrong is removed from your environment.
Mhm.
And that way you are, avoiding any worst case scenarios.
Yeah. Definitely. And the other thing too, when you're creating and you're putting your content online, remember that this is creating a footprint of the things that you do. So if you show good safety practices online, so you're showing that you're always, you're using sanitizer, you're wearing a mask, you're always doing these things, you prioritize safety. In the case that something goes wrong, there is a good footprint that you generally follow good safety rules, as opposed to looking at some people's Instagrams where they're showing a lot of repetitive bad safety choices. Then they're going to be in a different situation if something was to happen.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I love that you mentioned that, because not only are we, if we go online and we share these things with the world, a lot of people are oblivious. They don't know what's normal, what's safe, what should be avoided. And so they might copy what they see as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And so if you are putting something out into the world for others to see, remember that. Are you demonstrating safe habits and being the example that others can
Be the good
follow?
example. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why you're here. That's why you're taking this course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we have a few more questions that some photographers have submitted.
Mhm.
So why don't we run through those
Sure.
and see what we can cover?
About-
Yes, this is perfect. So this is something that we didn't talk about earlier in our last live, and that is about having young infants and how to handle them working with newborns.
Mhm.
So,
Toddlers.
sorry, young
Siblings.
toddlers. I totally had a brain fart. Okay, so when having young siblings in the studio and
Yes.
having them come for the newborn session, I always talk about this with my parents ahead of time.
Yeah.
So we usually have this handled in our consultation before they even book in. But what I recommend, even in my prep guide, we talk about it repeatedly, is what type of personality does your toddler have?
Mhm.
Are they shy? Are they super active? Are they really very like stranger danger? Like what are they going to do when they come to the studio? Are they going to run around and be wild and hyper, or are they going to be moody and they don't want to have anything to do with me?
Mhm.
So when I ask those questions with the parents, and I'm not asking them like that. I'm a little bit more discreet.
Yes.
I try to just, get
Mhm.
the personality from the parents. However, what I say is I can adapt to whatever type of personality your toddler has.
Mhm.
And I'm going to pick the safest option. So, for instance, if you were to have a toddler, for instance, that has been diagnosed with autism or is on the spectrum, I just wanted to point this out that because they have such sensory issues that you have to be extra sensitive to, I would recommend that perhaps you don't pose the infant with the
Mhm.
sibling. And the reason why is because you can do it with a composite instead. And how you would do that is you could pose the baby in a bucket, take the shot either before the siblings arrive or
Mhm.
after the siblings leave. And then when the toddler is there, have that toddler sit next to the bucket, the
Mhm.
empty bucket. Okay.
Mhm.
This is by far the safest
For
option
sure it is.
working with a child with pretty much any type of behavior, even any, age under 2, I would say,
Mhm.
because toddlers in general are unpredictable. And they could do things that are totally unexpected that
Mhm.
just make your heart jump out of your chest. So, just making sure that everything is safe. And if they are a more relaxed toddler that is less active, then you could do something such as laying them on their back on a flocati, which is like a thick woolly fur. And then we have the infant swaddled in the potato wrap. So they're very bundled, very secure. And then what we do is we have the toddler have their arm
Mhm.
around the infant, and the infant and them are cuddled, and you are taking the picture from up above with a neck strap over your camera around your neck
Mhm.
to make sure that you don't drop the camera on them.
That's right.
And that is something that you can do for younger siblings as well if you aren't concerned about having them next to the baby.
Mhm.
For siblings that are older, what you can do is, depending on the age, what I like to do if they are much older, let's say 4 or 5 years old, I always have a parent being right next to them, just out of the frame as a spotter. And if they sit cross-legged, that is something that I'll even get the parents to support the infant's head
Mhm.
and just edit it out and just make sure that the baby is secure and safe before I take the picture, obviously.
Yeah.
But that is another option that you can do for posing siblings with an infant. So there's lots of different scenarios that are
Yeah.
available to photographers. And
For
by
sure.
educating yourself and taking the correct courses, you will be able to see what is possible and what is safe and what is routine.
Yeah.
And I actually have a course that is available to anyone that is interested, and it's under the Essentials course, and it is for beginners, and it's also for intermediate. It really is for anybody who wants to learn from me.
Yeah.
And it can be found at momtalkeducate.com.
Awesome. The other thing to consider too is knowing that ahead of time, or maybe planning what time, the timing of all of that too. We do
Yes.
talk about that in the course as well.
Yeah.
But if you're at their home, then that's different. But making sure that there's supervision for that child, or there's something for them to do, or things like that too. So I know at my office in Leduc, we allow people to bring their children with them, and so we get everything from a child that just sits nicely and colors the whole time to children that cannot sit and really should be unsupervised. And we've only had one incident in the 20 years where I had actually asked the mom to not bring her child in with her because it was too unsafe. We do acupuncture, we do things like this. The kid was knocking over carts. Like it was it became a very unsafe scenario.
Yeah.
And that's only ever happened once to me out of all of the time. So, I mean, for the most amount of time, it's fine, to have them there and all of that. But beware that if you feel like they're starting to, knock things over and pull out your stuff or things like this, that you either need to handle it or you need to have somebody that can supervise that child or take them outside or something like that while you're focusing on the newborn. Because I don't know, I'm a mom, and if I see something happening, my initial instinct immediately is to go over and deal with it. And then I may be leaving the infant. So you don't want to be distracted.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. See, this is why it's great to have somebody with you to talk about these things, because Tennille is so aware of safety issues, and that's why she is an awesome person to do this course with. But my thought as well was, when I have a young sibling, this also goes down to the consultation phase. Like Tennille had mentioned, being aware of what the situation could be. But I also ask the parents to not bring the sibling in until the very end, or leave with them immediately after their portion is finished. And so you might be wondering, well, what if the mom has a C-section? What if the mom doesn't drive? Blah, blah, blah. That is also discussed. So I just say, you know what, if you want to bring your mom maybe, and then like grandma, and then grandma can take the toddlers out and the siblings home after, and then your partner can stay with you to finish off the session. Or they can come at the very end with the toddler or sibling, and we finish off the session. So it really depends on age of the child and the time of the session that we're doing. So if we're doing a morning session and the toddler needs to have a nap around the time I would typically do the sibling portion, then we're going to start with the infant and toddler and do the family and let them leave, because I don't want the situation that you described where they're running around, tripping on things, knocking things over, going through all of my stuff, getting in front of me, in between me, trying to safely pose an infant. It's just a recipe for disaster.
For sure. We do have a question here, and I'd like to address this today. How should I sanitize my hands and props before the session? And the reason why I think this is a really good question is actually right now where we live, there's a measles outbreak in the Stollery in the Children's Hospital. And so, again, these things happen, right? And so we can never be too careful. So I just want to talk a bit about sanitization. At my clinic, I've had to do a ton of research in terms of products and things to use. And so now I'm talking about DIN numbers in Health Canada. If you're in the States, obviously things will be a little bit different. But it is important to look at one of the things that you should know is that there is a difference between sanitizing something and just simply cleaning it. So the definition of cleaning something is to just, take the dirt and wipe it away and take the debris and the dirt off, where sanitization is where you're actually killing viruses and structures like that. So every product that you use will have a contact time on it. So if it's a sanitizer, it will say contact time, and it could be anything from 1 minute to 5 minutes to 10 minutes. At our clinic, we use a 1 minute contact time sanitizer because we're constantly moving and we're having to change things quickly because you guys are not necessarily doing things fast. It wouldn't necessarily matter. But what's important to know is that you need to put the sanitizer on. It needs to remain wet for the remainder of that contact time. And then you need to clean it off again. Oh, wow. So you really need to use, it's not just like spraying something down and using whatever product and walking away. So there is specific protocols that you want to keep in place if you're thinking about actually killing virus, which is different than just wiping down your counter to clean it. So those are two different things that you're talking about. We use products that are it's a hydrogen peroxide. And so it's low, it doesn't have any smell to it. You can touch it. You don't have to use PPE or gloves to use that sanitizer. And so I think that these are all things that you should think about when you're trying to choose your cleaner. Don't just walk into the grocery store and be like, wow, this one's on sale. Yeah. You really want to look at all of the instructions and read all of that through. So you can put the DIN number into the Health Canada website. It will tell you whether or not it's approved as a sanitizer in Canada. Same thing. There's a different product for the States, but that will go on. You need to know, do I need to be wearing masks or a glove while I'm using this product? You need to know the contact time and how long you have to leave it wet. And then you want to wipe it off again because you don't want to leave that sanitizer on a surface and then put like a baby's face on it or something like that. Yeah, right. So these things are really important. And honestly, I would say even before the pandemic, I really didn't understand the difference between all of these things. And you'd just be like, here's some Lysol and wipe it down and push it through. Yeah. So the point of sanitizing is actually
To kill a virus.
to kill the virus. And especially when we're dealing with outbreaks that's happening right now,
Yeah.
it just comes into place. So it's something to think about. Pick a good cleaner, stay consistent with your cleaner. Don't just pick something that's online, and learn how to use it, and make sure that I would recommend, especially with working with newborns, that you're using a cleaner that is effective, but also not something that you need to wear gloves on, or not something that's smelly. So
Right.
something without any smell to it.
Okay, so just even for my own personal curiosity, what website would I go to find a cleaner that
Yep.
would meet
All of
those requirements, and then for me to even get the DIN number to put into the health?
Yep. So if you just
website.
go to Health Canada website on the disinfectants,
Uh-huh.
it will list all of them that are approved.
Oh,
And so you
okay.
can just go through the list and look all
And
them.
it'll tell you where to buy them?
Yeah, and it'll, yep.
Oh, okay.
So the one I use at the clinic is called Oxiver. I'm not plugging it because it's,
yeah, she's
you
not
know,
getting paid. She's not sponsored
No.
by it.
but it's one that we use, and I can put it in the chat afterwards. It's one that
Yeah.
I have researched. I have never had anybody have any sort of allergy or reaction to it.
Okay.
It has a low contact time, and it's quite common in health places to do that. You don't need to go to those really aggressive cleaners, that we say the tattoo artists, or even we use, because we're doing acupuncture. Like when you're dealing with blood and going through, you need a
Yeah.
really aggressive cleaner, and then you have to wear like a mask
Right.
and gloves for that. That's not something we need here.
Okay.
But you also should be doing more than soap and water, but yet also not killing a baby with chemicals. So
Exactly. It
Yeah.
is definitely a fine line.
Mhm.
And I love that you've done all the research, because that is something that I feel like I don't fully comprehend. So I'm so glad that you do, and you've done the research and you know exactly what, because yeah, it's true. Like I know basic cleaners from the store, like, Lysol and those sorts of like sanitizers, anything that has a
That's
label
right.
that's on sale that
That's on
says,
sale.
I'm going to kill 99.9% of everything. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that
Yeah,
you
so I can
mentioned
share
that.
what we've used at our clinic, because you will have some people that will also use more, natural ways to kill things, and 100%, there's nothing wrong with using, vinegar and water if your goal is simply just to clean. But if the
Mhm.
goal is sanitization, you have to use the proper structure. And especially when you're dealing with, like right now, the Stollery has an outbreak of measles. So Catherine's going to have to be more careful with her newborns in the next month,
Yeah.
because if any of those babies are coming out of that hospital, they may have been exposed. And so
Which is so scary.
it's quite scary. Yeah,
And
for
if
sure.
it's happening in Edmonton, it could be happening anywhere.
That's right. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
thought that one was important too. And then there is another question about, are certain materials or props unsafe for newborn photography? Do you have any comments on that one?
Yeah, I think that's more towards like wools and different
Mhm.
types of fabric and that sort of thing. So unfortunately, when we're dealing with newborns, they're so brand new that we aren't going to know really, and the
Yeah.
parents aren't going to know if they have an allergy to something. So try and use things that are soft, not scratchy fabrics or not scratchy materials that
Yeah.
could irritate their skin. Obviously, a lot of the fabric that we use are synthetic, because they have, all the different stretchy fibers to them.
Mhm.
And so most often there's not going to be a reaction to anything. So just keep in mind when you're choosing a fabric, make sure that it is soft to the touch. It's not scratchy, and it doesn't have, anything unsanitary. Like
Mhm.
if you get something that is a natural fiber that's possibly not been thoroughly cleaned before you've gotten it. I've actually ordered a felted fur from a vendor before in the
Mhm.
past, and it was full of debris from the sheep because it was very natural.
Yeah.
And it was gross. Like I didn't even want to use it
Yeah.
because it was so gross. So just really keep in mind, whatever you're putting an infant next to or on or wrapped in, just be mindful of everything
Of that.
as far as fabric and everything.
For sure. And when it comes to fabric, some things are harder to clean, obviously. So steamers are good.
Yes.
But don't forget that you can also freeze that virus. So if you had like a little teddy bear and I don't know, there was vomit on it or something, you can throw that stuff in the freezer and freeze it. And then you can get rid of the virus that way as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So just
Good
like
to know.
another tip, if you have something that you don't feel like, I don't know if I can clean this or not, freeze it.
Yeah. And that there are a lot of different items that we get that are very difficult to clean and
Mhm.
sanitize, such as like Angora, or like I don't know why my brain is, I'm like, what are the different fibers? There's alpaca, there's a lot of different types of like woolly yarn and stuff. All of that can't be thrown in the wash. It has to be steamed, or it has to be hand washed and hand sanitized, and it's a lot more work. So just be prepared that if you are using anything with a real yarn, real fiber, that you can't throw it in the wash, and that you should be getting the baby to wear a diaper when you are using those types of fabrics and materials, just to protect, because they're really expensive.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we'll just also comment. There's lots of questions about temperature of the studio. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Wow. Okay. So, okay. Absolutely. So temperature is, I think this is something that I was confused about for years and years, because I was always just going off of information that was online and from other photographers. And I feel like newborn photographers, the going idea is that it has to be like super crazy hot in the room, in the posing room. And that's what I did for a long time. And honestly, it wasn't worth it. And there is more risk of a baby overheating with a room that's crazy hot. So what you can do to prevent overheating is to keep the room at a more moderate temperature. So I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but you guys can Google it. But I would say a starting temperature could be around 20, 21 Celsius. And then what you can do is have a space heater in the area specifically to where you're posing the newborn. And the space heater should not be pointed towards the face. It should not be blowing direct heat onto the skin. You do need to be aware of those things. And we do talk about that in our safety course.
Safety course as well. Yeah. It's 68 degrees according to Google.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Fahrenheit.
That is very helpful. Thank you for looking that up. So definitely you don't have to have it really super hot. Just be mindful of what temperature you're comfortable with. And if it's uncomfortable for you, it's going to be uncomfortable for the parents. When you are posing an infant that is naked, that is why it needs to be warmer. As soon as that infant is wearing a outfit like a romper or is wrapped, you can shut the heat off. Like not like to zero, but you can unplug the space heater, shut that off, and then even have some air circulation is really good. So even have a fan running just to keep the airflow going so that people don't feel sick. Because when you feel really warm and muggy, like it cannot feel very good for the parents, especially. So another thing to keep in mind when you're posing parents with the sibling and the infant, because they can overheat really quickly, not just the infant, but the parents, and especially mom after having an infant and she's recovering, she can get lightheaded. She can get very warm very quickly. So it's really important that you are asking those questions to mom, letting her know if you feel like dizzy or lightheaded, let me know and I'll take the baby from you and you can go sit down and have a snack or a drink or something like that.
What would you suggest if we were in someone's home and you don't really have control of the temperature? Would you ask them to change it before you got there?
Yes.
Would you bring a heater or, you know, say you're in the States and it's really hot? Would you bring
an air? Absolutely. You know? If you are in a state where you are dealing with constant heat, you do need to have an air conditioner. So it's the opposite of Canada. So most of the southern states have that glorious temperature to work with, which is I'm jealous of. But in that case, you would have air conditioning going. You would want to make sure that the room is still at a comfortable and moderate temperature and make sure that that baby has airflow going onto them, because you wouldn't want a baby to be in distress. And what would you consider a baby, like a sign of an infant being in distress if they were overheated?
For sure. Again, so I think we always say the first sign of distress is crying. And so we don't know, I mean, crying means everything, right? It means they're hungry. It means they're tired. It means that they pooped. It means everything. So you're going to see crying, but that doesn't necessarily mean distress. It is a sign of distress, but it's also a sign of so many other things. But again, if we're looking at breathing, again, you've taken your CPR course, so you understand breathing rates, but there's going to be a massive change in breathing. So they might, again, newborns normally will change their breathing, but you're going to see something different. You may see blueness around the lips often. Something that's, stridor is sort of like a honking noise. They sound like they're honking. If it feels like they're collapsing in through the trachea or down through here, then for sure they're in quite a bit of distress, and that's very concerning. But even just flaring of nostrils, if there's a constant flaring of nostrils, that's a more a subtler sign of
Mhm.
possible respiratory distress.
Mhm.
And so again, let's unwrap them. Let's just
Mhm.
start over, right? Let's
Yeah.
remain calm. Let's unwrap them. Let's make sure that they've got good temperature.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that, again, go through your basics, but we go through all of that in the course as well.
Yeah.
So it's quite a bit of information for sure.
Yes. And that is just such a great, and it's a question every newborn photographer has. How do I know? What
How
do
do
I
you
look
know?
for? What are the cues? What's going to
Mhm.
happen? How do I make sure that doesn't happen? So,
Yeah, I guess that's why I would highly recommend, if you're not a parent or you haven't been around newborns a lot, work with healthy newborns first before
Mhm.
you start trying to take newborns with medical conditions. You'll feel so much more comfortable once you get used to how you'll normally it'll become very common sense after a while of how newborns breathe and how they react and all of that. And
yes.
once you have that natural instinct for that, I
Mhm.
think then you'll be able to understand when something's wrong
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
A lot of people wonder, can you be a photographer if you've never had kids?
Mm.
Or a newborn photographer, sorry. Be more
I mean,
specific. So,
absolutely, you can,
of
for
course.
sure.
Yeah.
So and maybe the other question we could talk about today too, because I know you have twins, is do you have any recommendations about photographing multiples?
Yes. Yes, from being a mom of twins and also having photographed many twins. So, absolutely, you always want to have an assistant come to the session, whether you have to pay them or trade your time and help them on a twin session in exchange. It doesn't matter. Get somebody in there to be your second set of hands.
Mhm.
The person that you choose to be your assistant should also have newborn safety training
Mhm.
in posing and be very aware of those cues from a newborn.
Yeah.
Because if they don't know what they're looking for, then you are only focused on the newborn you're handling, and that person is focused on that newborn. And then you could be having a situation where maybe one infant is not necessarily being looked after properly.
Yeah.
So definitely make sure that whoever you get in there with you is fully trained. And oftentimes the best person to have is another newborn photographer that's
Mhm.
local to you within an hour distance. I would say is perfect because they can drive an hour and meet you
Mhm.
at the session and be your assistant, and they're fully trained. You're fully trained. It's just very good to have that person to rely on. And the reason why, not only for safety purposes, is because then they can work alongside you and do the exact same thing you're doing. And
Mhm.
then the session is not going to take all day. It's going to be done within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, and if you're seeing lots of multiples, maybe that's somebody you collaborate with and you do the
Absolutely.
session, together or something like
Yeah,
that too. So
absolutely.
there's lots of different ways to look at things. And I think that the other thing too is if you don't have a lot of experience and you don't have someone to help you, it's okay to refuse that work as well if you
Mhm.
don't have the right tools and the right knowledge.
Yeah, and definitely, like, as far as training goes, I'm just gonna give you some ideas on the steps in training. So first we mentioned the infant CPR, 100%.
Absolutely.
That is gonna be number one. So the next step you can take is doing an online newborn posing course. The reason why I recommend that and not just going straight into an in-person workshop is two reasons. First reason is you have no idea what to expect. And so having an in-person workshop is going to be $1,000 or $2,000, and depending on whether it's one-on-one or a group shot
Mhm.
or a group workshop. And if you have no idea what you are going to be expecting and you go into it with no previous history of this, it's not going to mean anything. You're not going to grasp anything. You're not going to retain any information. It's going to go right over your head. And that's a lot of money.
Mhm.
The difference with an online course is that you can rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it. And you
Mhm.
can really like ingrain it in your brain. And that is something that when you do an in-person workshop, it's all live.
Mhm.
Nothing's recorded. So you have to remember, you have to take notes or whatever. And the thing is that to me, it's important to do both. But the difference is you're going to do the online course first.
Mhm.
You're going to find out, can you even handle it? Can you
Mm.
handle what they're doing online?
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
think you can handle it, the next step then would be to take a safety course,
Mhm.
specific to like maybe like an additional first aid course or something like that. But also then you're going to take the in-person workshops. So the online courses for posing like for newborn photographers and the safety course, online safety course, and then in person. So CPR, infant CPR, online, in person.
For sure. I think one other thing, I don't even know if we mentioned this in the course, but just, going through, even just trying to volunteer for my children's stuff in Alberta, is that it's almost 100% needed that you need a vulnerable sector check and a check from the RCMP as well in to make sure that you're not, a criminal.
Yeah.
So vulnerable sector check just basically says, yes, I've had this done and I am legal to work with underage children. So even just to volunteer to take my kids skiing tomorrow, I had to do this, and I had to go through an interview process. I had to go to the RCMP office and do a few things, and I'm dealing with a 10-year-old at this point. So can you just imagine, right? Now you're dealing with a brand new baby. You do it. It's that extra step that you can show people that I care, that I'm certified, that I'm safe. Yeah. And I'm, so it's something else I'd recommend.
Absolutely. Well, I think we have talked and talked and talked.
Yes, we sure have.
So I think maybe as just a quick recap, if you missed the beginning of our live on YouTube here, we are collaborating on a newborn safety photography course. And Tennille, do you want to just recap real quick who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm a physiotherapist. I've been a physiotherapist for 23 years. I've always worked in direct patient care. I also own my own clinic, and we have a full, safety team on board with that. And I also have a second business, not called Navisus, where we work specifically with different industries, and we work in their business to make them more safe ergonomically, make sure that all of those things are set up and that stuff as well. So it's a combination of experience for sure.
Yeah. And I am Catherine Barretto, and I am the creator of MomTog Educate. I have been specializing in newborn photography for 13 years, and I have 4 kids of my own, and that's pretty much what got me into it. And Tennille actually was a very big part of me starting newborn photography. So it's kind of like full circle that I get to do this with you. So it's really amazing. Yeah. I also have a personal photography company that it's Raindrop Photography, and it's a little wonky spelling because it's my daughter's middle name. So it's RAYNE Drop Photography. So I will link the website for you for Navisus and your clinic, as well as momtogeducate.com and Raindrop Photography. I will link all of that in the description. Let's quickly just discuss the newborn safety course that we have rolling out soon. So I'm just going to talk about the dates really quick.
Sure.
Just because I know that I haven't officially announced the dates that we are going to start selling the course. So the first week it's going to be on sale for an early bird price, and that is going to be $175 US. And this course includes 6 modules of video lessons, as well as additional module full of resources. And we have bonus videos as well. And we are going to be launching this on the let me just pull up the date because I don't want to say the wrong date.
Yes.
We are selling it on the 24th. So Monday, March 24th is the official day it goes on sale.
Yes.
And so you have a few more days to get ready to grab this course. It will only be this cheap. I'm going to say cheap because it has got so much value that it is 100% worth the full price.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be $175 for 1 week. And then 7 days later, it's going to be back up to the regular price of $299.
Yeah.
And with this purchase, you do get lifetime access to the course, as well as continued support if you have questions inside the MomTog Educate Facebook group. And you will, once you finish the course, you will be able to take a quiz. It's 40 questions. You do need a passing grade of 80% or higher. And then once you pass it, you will be able to be given a custom certification of completion for the course, and a badge to put on your website. And the certificate is signed, and you can print it and put it on your wall.
Yes.
So
absolutely. Yeah, we're so excited.
Awesome. So I am so thankful for everyone who popped in today and watched. I apologize if you asked questions because nothing showed up on our chat. So if you were asking questions, I apologize because we were not trying to ignore you. But if you do have questions as you watch the replay, feel free to post them and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And if you didn't have a chance to and you don't want to post on YouTube, you're more than welcome to pop into the Facebook group. I am going to link it below. You can also follow both of us on Instagram, and I will also drop those social media handles inside the description.
Awesome. Great.
Okay, so thank you for joining us. It was an awesome morning. I feel like we talked about so many good things.
Yes, absolutely.
And this was definitely a valuable morning. So thank you so much, Tennille.
Have a good morning, everyone. Bye.
Bye.